How you doing? This is Coach DeCarlo. I'm playing with Instagram. Of course, this is my first attempt at going live on Instagram. I've done it on other platforms, and I was determined that I was going to learn how to go live on Instagram. I didn't give this talk a title, but really what I want to talk about is the money algorithm. Now, why the money algorithm? Recently, I was on TikTok, another platform, the competition, as it were. I was on TikTok, and a young lady showed up in my feed, and she said, listen, if you want to blow your channel up, then start looking at more videos about blowing your channel up, and what will happen is that TikTok will send you more videos on how to blow your channel up. And I started thinking about that as part, pertaining to thinking. And I noticed that I was getting all kind of stuff in my TikTok feed that I really wasn't interested in, but what had happened was that I was kind of scrolling through, and apparently I gave some of these things my attention, because in giving them my attention, they started showing up in my feed. And like I said, many of these things I wasn't really even interested in. Some was about dark depression. One was a very attractive young lady, and she was talking about her dealing with depression and her different ailments and so forth. And then after I received the one about this young lady in her darkness, in her depths of darkness, I started getting more because, of course, TikTok said, well, he must want more of that. Why do I bring this up? Many of us are basically giving our attention to things, our algorithm. We're giving our attention to things that we don't want to show up in our lives, and we keep wondering why these things keep showing up in our lives. But the reason why they keep showing up is because we keep giving them our attention. Point in case, I started thinking about the first part of the year of attracting more money abundance in my life, and I used the Neville Goddard technique, and basically it was getting into a state akin to sleep. And he says, listen, act as if you're the actor on the screen and not the participant watching the movie. So what I did was I started seeing myself, I saw my hands reaching out and obtaining and grabbing more money. And shortly what started happening, and I don't fabricate, I don't do things for sensationalism, I can actually give proof of the things that I'm telling you. Checks started coming. Now, the first check was for $15, but you know what? I thanked God, universe, for the $15 as though it was $1 million or $1 billion, because I wanted to be in the algorithm or the vibration of receiving money. And so I continued to do this. And shortly what happened was another check came into my life, and it was a little bit more. So the other day I was cleaning up some paper. I had this pile of envelopes of things that I needed to go through. And I started going through this pile of envelopes, and one of the envelopes said, you need to go to the bank and claim this money, before, it expires. Again, it was another check. I'm not saying this to boast. I'm saying this to let you know how this stuff works. If Jesus said it this way, you shall know a tree by its fruits. Now, understand, he's not talking about apples and oranges. He's talking about lifestyle. If certain things keep showing up in your life, it's because either consciously or unconsciously, you're giving your attention to those things. It may be something like I said when I was on TikTok. In passing, I just kind of paused through and looked at this one particular video, and TikTok said, oh, he likes that, and TikTok started sending me more videos like that. I'm like, why am I getting, and I'm trying to turn it off. The way you turn it off, say that you're attracting things in your life, things that you don't want. The way you turn it off is you stop giving it your attention. So first and foremost, the young lady was a nice young lady, but I didn't want to keep getting these depressing videos in my feed. So I had to mute that individual. Sometimes you got to mute people. Sometimes you got to mute your voice. And what do I mean by that? I was thinking about the first of the year. One of the things that I wanted to do on the various platforms was learning how to go live. So, I'm doing it now on, I've done it on YouTube, I've done it on Instagram now, and I've done it on TikTok, I've done it on Facebook. Those are my major platforms. But when I started thinking about this, there was a still small voice that tried to discourage me. And as I stated in one of my YouTube videos, I had to tell that still small voice to shut the hell up. Now, people say, well, you're not being loving toward yourself. I absolutely am being loving to myself. That voice has kept me stuck in certain positions, and we call that voice ego. Some people want to give it the name Satan and all this other stuff. I don't ascribe to a devil. For those who do, I'm not discounting that. But if we really look, the devil that we're dealing with is the devil within. And point in case, when Jesus was in the wilderness and he was tempted 3 times, we gave the persona, we called it Satan or the devil. But Scripture says that let no one say that they're tempted when they're tempted, that they're tempted of God or outside forces, but that each one is tempted when they're drawn away by their own lust or desires. Jesus couldn't have been tempted about turning the bread, as it were, turning the rock into bread, or casting himself off of the pinnacle for the power, or, worshiping Beelzebub or the spirit, the devil, whatever you want to call. I call it the flesh. Jesus couldn't have been tempted by ego if those temptations weren't already in Jesus. So what do I mean by that? You're not going to tempt me by saying, I'm going to give you, if you don't do this, I'm not going to give you beets, for example. I don't like beets, so you can't tempt me with beets. But you can tempt me with those things that I'm tempted by, those things that I'm drawn by. Paul said, I didn't know covetousness until I looked at my own heart and realized that I was coveting certain things. But my whole point is, we can't be tempted by things that don't tempt us. Now, of course, those things that do tempt us, we can't be tempted by. My point about Jesus was tempted by something that was already in. Now, being tempted isn't wrong. We're all tempted. The thing is, what do we do with those temptations? So, and going back to the point, the stuff that was being sent to me on TikTok, for example, was based off of what I had given my attention to. And so the algorithm said, let's give them more of that. The stuff that's showing up in your life repeatedly are the things that you're giving your attention to. If you want to turn it off, then mute it by giving your attention to something else. Somebody had inquired on my YouTube channel, Coach, how do you turn it off? You turn it off by replacing it with a more desirable thought. Now, people say, well, I can't do that. It takes practice. I was in traffic. I was headed to my corporate job one day, and somebody cut me off. I was furious because they almost caused me to have an accident, and they went on about their business. And I had to think about that, why I was upset, because I knew that I was going to take that upset into work, and it was going to kind of plague my day. And I wrote a different story. I said, what if this individual is going to an emergency? What if this person had just heard bad news? Once I reframed the story, it released me to release that individual. We call it forgiveness, but it released me to release the individual that had cut me off. Now, that person that cut me off wasn't thinking about me, and they went on about their day, and all the other people that they cut off and so forth, they just went on about their day. The tool of forgiveness wasn't about them. It was about me. And a lot of us, we're holding things in our spirit, and the way that we overcome them is begin writing a different story. When you begin to write a different story and you begin to tell yourself a different story, all of a sudden you're going to start seeing different results. The problem for most of us is that over a course of time, we've repeatedly told ourselves a particular story. And so that story keeps showing up in our lives about money, about relationships, about health. Whatever the story that we continuously repeat is the story that we're going to continue to live out. So in order to change your algorithm is that you have to start focusing on some new information. And my screen, I just want to make sure I don't lose you guys. My screen kind of dimmed out a little bit. Why is this important? The reason why this is important is because when you begin telling yourself a different story, you're going to begin to see different results. But first, you have to begin getting new information into you. if I didn't have anything else to draw from, then the only thing that I would have been able to draw from was that old story. So you start listening to talks like these. You start listening to the Neville Goddards, the Joseph Murphys, the Bob Proctors, Joe Dispenzas, whoever it is that motivates you, that causes you to take your life to the next level. Once you start doing that on the habitual, and that becomes your way of life, once the negative stories, the old stories come up, what's going to happen is you're going to be able to pull from that new information, and that's going to begin to be your new story. And over time, you're not even going to notice it. You're just going to notice one day you're going to have a dramatic change. But you have to begin telling yourself a different story. But that means you have to make sure that you're taking on different information. Point in case, I have a friend of mine that she will often send me humorous posts. And a lot of times when I open them up, I'm like, I really didn't want that in my spirit. And so now I'll just acknowledge the post, but I won't open it up. Reason being, 2-point. I don't want the information in my psyche. But the other thing is, when you open up, on, let's say on TikTok or whatever vehicle you're on, when you open up that link that they sent you, what happens is TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, they all say, oh, they want more of this. And so now I'm getting this humor that I'm not really interested in. So what I find is if I don't open it up, then I'm not being received, as it were, seeing those feeds being sent to me. Don't open yourself up to things that are not advantageous towards your growth, towards your mindset. Start being mindful, creators. I have to share this story, and I don't know if this person is listening. A couple of years ago, I was in conversation with a friend that was in the UK, and we would communicate back and forth. But during that time, it was during Corona, and their whole conversation was about Corona. And for me, it was just too much. So I kind of backed off of the conversations, and pretty soon we just stopped discussing anything altogether. About a couple months back, this person came back into my life, and we started communicating. And we started talking about various things, but this person started sending me stuff that didn't align with my spirit. And I told him, I said, listen, you can't send me that type of information. First of all, I'm not going to open it anymore. I said, but you know what I teach, and I teach on mindset. So if I'm teaching on mindset and you're sending me all this negative stuff, it's going to impact me, and I really don't want this information. Now, am I a saint? No, I love action movies, and so I have to be mindful. But this stuff was political stuff. This stuff was just dark stuff, conspiracy theories, as it were. I didn't want that stuff in my spirit. So I asked the person not to send it. Now, they said that they understood, and right after that they sent me more. We were having a conversation. We had a dialogue going back and forth. And we were talking about, the mindsets of individuals and so forth. And this person said, what I would do, just bomb them all out. I'm like, bomb? I'm like, where did that come from? They're talking about bomb. I said, listen, don't send me messages about bombing. I said, this is a very serious topic. And I said, there's powers that be that are monitoring these systems. And if you're talking about bombing someone, they're like, I'm only joking. You should be able to take a joke. I don't want that in my spirit, but nor do I want somebody knocking on my door 6 months down the road and saying, well, we were watching these interactions between you and this other person about bombing. Certain things are going to raise a flag. You can call it conspiracy or whatever, but certain things on the internet, we're being monitored. And if you think that we're not, you're being naive. If you continuously send off stuff about violence and so forth, you're going to start raising flags. I told this individual, please don't send me that kind of stuff. They took it personal. We're no longer communicating again. But my point to you creators is you have to be mindful of what you're allowing into your spirit. And Neville Goddard would say this: there is no fiction. So if a person is talking about stuff as foolishness, as hurting people and bombing and so forth, there's something in that individual's spirit. And like I said, that's not something that I want to be gravitating towards. I want to lift up. I want to build up. I want to help people become their best selves, as it were, whatever that looks like. So I don't want all that negativity into my spirit. And what I'm saying to you creators, be mindful of what you're giving access to. You think that I'm just listening to this haphazardly, but if you're listening to drama all the time, that drama is being sown in your spirit. And often what happens, not often, always, that drama shows up in your world because subconscious mind literally can't take a joke. So when you're watching this, to the subconscious mind, this stuff is really happening. Like in our dreams, when we're experiencing certain things, our body is really going through those events in our dreams. So I just want you to be mindful of what it is that you're pouring into your spirit, and be mindful of the algorithm that you're giving in your life, whether it be towards abundance, whether it be towards health, whether it be towards relationship. What are you listening to on a daily? What are you giving your attention to? Because you keep wondering why these things are showing up in your world. It's because of what you're giving your attention to, even when it seems to be passively. Jesus said it this way, that we will give an account for even every idle word. We can even say that we will give an account for even every idle thought. That's how powerful. And so a lot of times we have to scrub or replace in order to take our lives to the next level. And we can talk about that in the next talk. I'm hoping that you're finding what it is that we're talking about beneficial. But I'm going to sign off now. Like I said, this was my test. But for those who missed it, early on, like I said, in the first part of the year, I started seeing money gravitating towards me. And recently, and this will be another talk, money started coming by way of checks. The first check, and again, this is the importance of, if lack was my thought, then the only thing I would see is more lack showing up, even when abundance presented itself. But because I started focusing on abundance and how I could serve, money started coming. First came in a small check. I gave thanks for it. Another time, PayPal said, we're going to send you some money because of your spending. Another time, another larger check came. And then I was going through a stack of envelopes the other day, and there was a notice saying, you need to cash this check, and it gave a certain amount. I'm like, this is a prank. Somebody's trying to run a scam on me. So I went through, because I didn't realize that I had received a check. So I started going through the other information that I had, and lo and behold, there was a check for the amount that was given. What are you giving your attention to, creators? Whatever it is that you're giving your attention to, that's what's going to show up in your world. And let me close by saying this. Only you can create your perfect world, not God or man. Only you can create your perfect world. This is Coach DeCarlo saying have a great and abundant day. And I hope that you enjoyed my first. This will not be the last. I'm getting familiar with the tools and so forth. So bear with me and all my flaws and so forth. And hopefully you just took something away from it. Love you guys, and I'll talk to you soon.